Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me in this continuing series of webinars on how COVID-19 has affected our planet in general, but more specifically, the human and economic toll it's had on all of us. Two of the most affected countries in the world are United States and Italy. The economic data released earlier this week confirmed that the US is in the midst of the greatest economic disaster since the Great Recession, if not the Great Depression of the 1930s. And sadly, we've had more people die from COVID-19 today than the entire Vietnam War. Italy has also seen the worst of things. One of the most, it's seen one of the most per capita deaths in Europe, and has been on lockdown orders since February. And of course, in California, we've had shelter-in-place orders since March 18th. All of us at our firm have been working remotely from home and in part producing these regular updates on how COVID-19 has affected the practice of immigration law and its effect on our clients, our lives, and our businesses. Today, I have my business partner, Alexander Carl, joining me from his beach house in Venice, California. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And we're also pleased to have Marco Bersoni, an immigration and business lawyer from Verona, Italy, join us. Good morning, Marco. How are you?
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Alexander, for your invitation.
Of course, definitely.
All right. So just diving right into this, let me start with Marco. Marco, how has COVID-19 affected your practice and your clients?
Well, the coronavirus pandemic, as you correctly said, in Italy, starting from last March, we are working remotely. So for the moment, we are working remotely. And in May, so this month, we are lucky because a few days ago, the Prime Minister announced that the lockdown will step by step finish for Italy. So businesses and offices will starting to reopen. So that's great news, a positive news that I can share with you for the moment.
Great.
That's fantastic. How about your clients? Has their cases been denied? Are there any specific regulations that have been applied to immigration to Italy?
Well, I consider that for the moment, people can enter in Italy, but only for emergencies or for medical reasons. So yes, in the first period, there were a lot of problems because we reported a lot of people that were in the United States, for example, and they didn't know how they can return to Italy. For the moment, the situation seems better because they organize a lot of flights for Italy. So, and for the moment, all people can travel to Italy. But of course, you have to prove that you will travel for medical reasons or for a sort of emergency that you have to declare at the moment that you are boarding.
What about quarantine? Are people subject to quarantine if they land in Italy?
For people, but initially, people were there were the orders about these people. So these people were in a quarantine. Yes, they can arrive in Italy, but they were quarantined in some specific buildings or special hospitals that the government built. So for the moment, the situation, as I said, is better because step by step, the government reorganized everything, so reorganized the immigration. But in a first step, you can imagine, I think maybe in the United States it's the same. There was a mess, and because nobody knows what to do. So there were no specific regulation on this situation.
Yeah, mess is the operative word here. So Alex, let's talk about our mess. Can you explain what the effects have been of COVID-19 in the United States?
Well, I mean, first off, there's been many temporary shutdowns of appointment centers as well as in-person interviews. So there's been delays across the board in issuance of, green cards, naturalization, etc. Right now, biometric, so ASC support centers are temporarily closed, meaning applicants cannot go get their biometrics taken. And without getting your biometrics taken, you're not going to be able to get your interview scheduled. Same applies for if you're initially applying for employment authorization, it's going to delay that as well. So we are seeing delays across the board. Now you can still file applications with USCIS. They will still adjudicate it. But again, no in-person interviews or biometrics appointments are being conducted right now. That's temporarily closed. So we are seeing, we are seeing delays across the board in that regard.
Okay, and what are the standing orders on various shutdowns as far as USCIS? Do we have an update on that?
Well, my understanding is that it has been extended. Now, Alec, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe extended through June, correct?
Well, immigration courts are still, May 15th, and
Okay.
USCIS is, yes, through June. I believe through June 3rd. It
Okay.
opens up on June 4th. As of right now, that of course is subject to change. What about shelter in place for California? Has that been updated to your knowledge?
No, I mean, Governor Newsom had his midday update or report yesterday, and there was no news on his behalf of whether or not the SIP orders were going to be extended, which was interesting because we thought we would get some news on that, being that the cutoff date now is May 15th. But we have no update in regards to that. I would imagine any day now we will get an update.
Right. Thank you for that. So Marco, I understand that your firm in Verona, Italy, which has multiple locations, correct? You have your main office in Verona, and then what other locations do you have?
Yeah, the main office in Verona, in the north of Italy, but we have some secondary offices like in London, in Madrid, in Los Angeles, in New York City, and in Dubai.
Okay, and you meet clients at all of these locations per appointment?
All locations are closed, of course, because the lockdown is extended to United Kingdom, to United States, to Dubai, so everything is closed.
Everything is closed for now. Now, as far as the workload that you have, that we saw kind of a similarity with our firm, is the investor visa that you handle, people going into Italy. Can you explain a little bit about that and whether COVID has affected that portion of your business at all?
Well, the coronavirus situation has affected, all visas that we process. Yes, principally we process visa practices like the investor visa and the elective visa that are the most requested visa for Italy. So yes, in this case, the main problem was for the consulates, because all consulates suspended all appointments. So you cannot have an interview at the consulates. And the big difficulty is related to that, because, for example, for the investor visa, you can, the application is split in two phases. You have a first phase where there is a commission that evaluates if you can be abstractly eligible for the investor visa. So we'll evaluate your financial portfolio and if you can be eligible. So this is a process that can be followed remotely, so there is no problem about. The problem is the second phase, so the consulate phase. So in this case, all appointments are suspended, and for the moment, consulate report that they don't fix new appointments. So big problem with clients that they have or to start a new visa application and they can't, or they have a visa application that is stopped and nobody knows when they can go forward with the application and finish the application.
Okay, thank you. Alex, is that your experience as well stateside?
Yeah, so it is, similar as well. Because of COVID-19, the pandemic, U.S. consulates are temporarily shutting down, or they've temporarily stopped in-person interviews at the consulates. And that's that's the last stage. That is a requirement that needs to be completed before these investment visas, these E2 applicants are able to obtain the visa in their passport. So, there is a delay in the issuance of these investment visas. However, you can still prepare the case. You can still file these cases with the consulate. You can still file the DS-160. And so you can get all that in and get in the queue to be scheduled for an interview. So when things open back up, you are in that queue. But again, yes, the in-person interviews are temporarily closed for now. So there is a delay across the board in the issuance of these visas.
So thank you for that. Marco, what about, or I should ask, do you have any Americans stranded in Italy, unable to travel because of COVID?
Well, for the moment, we didn't report it personally American citizens that had problems for returning. But if I will have a client like that, I will call you for sure.
Yes, please do. We have special planes on standby. Alex, what about Italians stranded here? What do we do about them?
So an Italian who may be stranded here, there is an avenue they can take. So if you enter on ESTA, let's back up a little bit. If you enter under the visa waiver program, which many Italian nationals do, then you cannot extend your status here in the US or change your status. So if you're unable to depart the US in a timely manner before your authorized stay is set to expire, one avenue you can take to avoid accruing unlawful presence in the US, which you do want to avoid because it will cause a myriad of issues in the future if you're trying to re-enter the US or apply for a visa. One avenue you can take is make a satisfactory departure request. These requests will extend your stay if they're approved for 30 days. So it avoids that foreign national accruing unlawful presence. Now, there's two changes that have been made to try to streamline these process for individuals affected by the COVID-19 virus who are unable to return on account of that. One is that you can now make these requests at any port of entry. In the past, or usually you had to make it at the port of entry where you last entered the US. Now you can make it at any port of entry. And also, they can be extended for an additional 30 days if, again, you can show emergent circumstances. And then, as Ali did inform me, and I looked into it a bit as well, that you can also call the 1-800 number. USCIS has a 1-800 number, and you can tell the officer your facts that you intend to make the satisfactory departure request. And if that individual on the other line determines on his face that, yes, your request seems legitimate, then they're going to provide you with an email address as well as a list of supporting documents where you can then submit the documents to that email address and they will adjudicate the request.
So is that just for how long? And can they do it again if they're still stranded at the end of that period, whatever they get?
Yeah, so, well, you need to make the request before your authorized stay expires. That's one requirement. And then for how long? Again, it extends it for 30 days. And yes, another new development is you can make the request again for an additional 30 days if, again, you can show emergent circumstances, which kind of prevents you from returning home in a timely manner.
Great, thank you. So, Marco, what about these Americans that just want to go to Italy and live? Is that possible? Just because Italy, just for pleasure, for long durations, not just like a few weeks.
Yeah, this is possible, of course, and this is exactly the elective resident visa. So in this case, people have to prove that they have a minimal annual income. This is not, must be, like a passive income. So you have to demonstrate to have like savings, investment funds, stocks, and something like dividends. And you can demonstrate that you can live without working in Italy. In this case, yes. It's a really training visa, because there are a lot of Americans that request this type of visa because, you know, they want to come in Italy and enjoy Italian life for some amount of time, stay in Italy, visit, and of course, with the normal tourist visa, it's not possible for more than 90 days. So yes, it's possible. Yes, we assist the clients to on these visas.
And is it possible to transition then to permanent residency and citizenship from that visa or not?
Yeah, after 5 years. So when you become an Italian resident, after 5 years, you can become a permanent resident. And after 10 years, you can become an Italian citizen.
So before becoming a permanent resident, are you able to work or no? You have to have savings for 5 years.
Yes, you have to demonstrate to have savings, investment, dividends. So you have some passive incomes. Yes, for the visa, for the first time, the visa issues for 1 year. Then you can ask for the renewal of the permit, the elective permit, for other 1 or 2 or 3 years. When you arrive to the 5 years, so you continuously be resident for 5 years in Italy, then you can apply for the permanent residence.
And does that give you entry into the European Union if you become an Italian citizen? Is there any difference?
Yeah. Yes, you in this case, yes, you have, of course, you have no the problem to think about renewals, and maybe they will not accept my renewal. So with the permanent resident permit, you can, of course, stay in Italy and you can travel in our Schengen zone you can in all Europe, Schengen zone. And yes, waiting, this is the step that all people do before. It's not mandatory, but it can be useful for these advantages. And this is a step they do in waiting for the Italian citizenship by resident, by naturalization.
Great. So Alex, on that line, what about dual citizens, Italian and U.S. dual citizens? Is that allowed?
Yeah, I mean, yes, the U.S. law does allow dual citizenship. So you can be a dual citizen. I mean, yes, an Italian national. If they become a permanent resident of the U.S., they have the requisite, physical requirements as well as residency requirements, which Marco says, as well as the U.S. is about 5 years. And they apply for naturalization. Their case is approved. They don't have to relinquish their Italian citizenship. They can be a dual national of the U.S. and Italy.
Awesome. Alex, have I left anything out? Is there anything that you want to add as far as the state side of things?
I mean, one thing I would like to add, and we've had a lot of calls from both clients and non-clients concerned about the new presidential proclamation that President Trump issued on April 22nd of 2020, and they have questions on whether or not they're subject to this proclamation. Is their entry into the U.S. suspended because of the proclamation? And one important thing is, there are many exceptions to this proclamation. Two important ones are non-immigrant visa applicants and non-immigrant visa holders are not, they're not barred from entering the U.S. on account of this proclamation, and nor are immigrant visa applicants who are applying based on their marriage to a U.S. citizen. So those are two big exceptions that, a good number of people fall under. And again, they're not barred from entering the U.S. due to the proclamation. So, I mean, that's one thing I did want to point out.